I want to open up with asking everyone a simple question. Has anyone had a dream where they're trying to say something and your voice doesn't come out? Anyone? Can I have a show of hands? You're trying to say something and there's no sound coming out. Okay. That is called an echo chamber. So an echo chamber, literally, is the quietest place on Earth, basically calculating sound frequencies. There's no sound that comes out. And our brief for our first year for the studio was to break the echo chamber. So essentially, we wanted sound to come out. We wanted to meet new people. We wanted to engage with different communities. We wanted to extend our role as architects. For us, that's not literal. We're custodians of our cities and our towns. It can start from a small-scale object all the way to urban design. So we broke the echo chamber, and we thought, OK, first year, let's get going. Started experimenting with filmmaking, how to expressively tell a story through filmmaking. We looked at interior spaces, how to express new interior spaces.
Yeah, and we also explored drawing. You know, as architects, we love drawing. And so we did a series of illustrations that celebrate the heritage of indigenous architecture. So I'll just go through those quickly. You know, the idea that it's not something that we should throw away and move on to Western ideals of building, but we should celebrate what we have. It's sort of the original sustainability. And being based here, we also said, well, if we're going to draw, let's make it a call to arms to focusing on what is the economy of Africa. So it's something people have talked about at Indaba, and I'm Zimbabwean, very proud of it. And if you look at the GDP of Zimbabwe, 46% of our GDP is in the informal sector. Comparing that to South Africa, which is at 17%, you can see how much of what we do is not this kind of commerce, but that. So we said to ourselves, let's look at these people as our clients, because as designers, we really do focus in on, you know, where the money is, because, you know, we need to get our jobs. But being Zimbabwean, you know, we've ignored such a large percentage of the economy. So we said, okay, why not design around their needs? So they already have set ideals about how they build. They're all self-built structures. So we said, let's encourage that and mimic that in designing structures that are easily changeable. And we did solutions for them that involved giving them access to clean water, having these community sinks around. And we did an experiment. As you saw, they all have some kind of umbrella. But we said, let's make that umbrella more than just a shade. So we turned one upside down, and it acted as a rainwater collector for them. Stuck a solar panel on top, and it became a small point of electricity. So what I want to focus in on is a journey we've been on this last year, which is looking at transport in cities. So everyone knows these in Africa, these minibus taxis. So we did a quick experiment. On your left is Cape Town, and on the right is Harare. And we asked Google a simple question: how do I get to the airport? And you can see for Cape Town, it's giving you a few options using the MyCity bus rapid transit system. And then for Harare, it says, listen, if you don't have a car, you can't get there unless you walk for 6 hours. So, you know, we all know that this isn't true, you know. So we said, how can we get this information shared? Because, you know, we are living in an informal economy, but we're also living in the information age. So we made this our goal to say, how can we get to that point where this information is available? So I'm sure a lot of us here are private drivers. And normally we look at these combis, as we call them here, as a nuisance, even though they do offer a significant lifeline to most people in the city. So we said, okay, really, this is a social network that exists, you know, that bridges different parts of the city, different people together. And we decided, okay, how do we get to Google? And what we found is that Google actually asks agencies to provide them the information. They don't make it themselves. And if an agency hasn't provided it, so MyCity has done it here, or HowTrain has done it, Google has a way for people to provide it. So we said, okay, this was New York, and they also have moved to this idea that informal transit is a positive thing. It's considered the 7th largest public transit network in New York. It started in the 80s, and they celebrate it, whereas we try and sweep it under the carpet. So we found a third-party app that allowed us to capture the routes and get the information that we need. They pioneered a system called the GTFS, General Transit Field Specification. So we're able to put in the information of where we were going, how many people were on the route, and start the journey. So we chose Harare to do this because, nothing was existing. We got the information from the app that we had. It plotted out all the routes. And then this is the routes that we mapped. And as you can see, Harare is a concentric zone city. Everything meets in the middle. So we took this as a starting point in how we coded and numbered each route and said to ourselves, let's just take a clock face and use numbers 1 to 12 as a prefix for each of the routes so that in the naming there was clue embedded in the direction of travel from the city center. So these are the main axes. And what we ended up doing also was saying, okay, if we're going to do the map, let's add on points of interest as little icons so that people could navigate around the city, knowing where police stations were, fire stations, hospitals, schools, post offices, and libraries. And we put it all together. In the end, we mapped 58 unique routes in Harare by taking about 300 trips. We're able to show where they congregate in the city center. There's several hubs, about 6 that fan out. And then we're also able to show where the routes intersect around the city so people could alight and change onto a different minibus if they needed to. Then we said to ourselves, the information age isn't just digital information. How do we get this information back into the city so that people can see it in their day-to-day life? So we followed the examples that already exist of putting these decals onto the buses, showing the name of the route, the endpoints, and the points of interest that you'll find along there. And then we said, the nature of minibuses, hop-on, hop-off system. So the infrastructure that councils normally put up are irrelevant. And we really believe in a design activism, and we want to, take back the roles that we surrender to the city or surrender to industry and put it in the hands of the people. Here you see you have private sector sign for a bus stop competing with public sector sign, and then a bus shelter that no one really needs because all of Harare is going about in minibuses. So we asked ourselves, what's the basic element? And the basic element of our design is a number in a box that someone could easily just tag on the street. But we decided to take the example set up by the council when all our signs started to degrade. So they stenciled street signs onto the city. So we said, let's do the same with our routes. So along the routes, at the crossroads, you'll find the number that passes in front of you. And we also created, some traditional forms of representation, little route cards, and we put this information onto stationery that we distributed into schools, rulers, onto notebooks. And then we worked with the trade union for the drivers and the conductors to say, okay, why not just take up a few T-shirts, everyone loves T-shirts, and use that as a sort of informal uniform that you can wear and give people hints of how they're getting to their location, either the name or, the suburb. And that was our intervention.
So the studio's also very much interested in looking at product innovation. So this is the start of a really interesting journey for us as architects, is to look at the small scale, which I'm going to talk about. This is a beautiful image. It's a person, actually, walking in a very dark street, using their mobile to illuminate their way. And the story that this tells is access to light, which is a very basic requirement for everyday function. We got excited about this. We wanted to create something that would innovate in this space. And one key thing that we're really, really excited about is how do we create mutually benefiting communities from opposing socioeconomic expecting. So if we have two communities that can somehow benefit, so we have on one side, for example, relief agencies, and on the other side we have big organizations in the hospitality sector. How can we have these two communities mutually benefit one another? And light is something that is very important in the education sector. You probably all understand this. So we started to look at business models, and this is a very intriguing part of the work we do. We start to unravel how business models work so that we can learn as designers, how can we innovate within this? So essentially, Textile was born as our first product, trademarked it. It's a combination of textile with technology inbuilt. We decided to build, and this is just a diagram explaining how it works, two versions of the same product that we sell to a big corporate organization in a developed city. And the sales of that actually produce a more simplified version that can go to relief agencies. So this is what it looks like. And these are diagrams of testing. One example is field, quick, adaptable textile that can be put out very quickly. Solar energy is harnessed. And it all comes from a really interesting business model where the similar product, a slightly more advanced version, is installed in, this is a VNA in London, and it's illuminating nighttime. So one is daytime, nighttime. So that's an example of something that we're really intrigued by, which led us to this project, Cup Club. So, how many of you love coffee? How many of you like your coffee on the go? You like doing various things, loads of hands coming up. You like to multitask. We all love multitasking. It's all about, life today is all about multitasking, doing 50 things at the same time. Drinking on the go is one of them. Now, how many of you like drinking your coffee on the go? So this is a hidden aspect of our lives. We choose not to recognize the outcomes of our actions, our everyday, silent actions that actually contribute to our society. And our role as architects, as custodians of the city, is to keep our cities clean. So the studio is really intrigued by how can we innovate towards something that's so simple, that's unseen, that people don't recognize. We looked at the impact. So this is London figures, which will be somewhat lower here, talking about a megacity. 2.5 billion cups, that's how much we consume a year. That amounts to 1.3 million tons of CO2. Now everyone's probably thinking, it's just cups. That's what it looks like. This is us every day. These are our custodians of the city. They clean up, this is Leroy, he cleans up about 100 cups off the city every day. This is what I call a waste buffet. One-time wonders, a little bit of sugar, a little straw. I mean, you literally whiz by and you've already created a fluff of waste behind you. This is a reality. This is general waste. This is for incineration. So if you think you're doing something that's quite generic, quite normal, it'll be recycled, I can guarantee you it's being incinerated. So one of the exciting aspects of the London studio, which we started to really look at, was a human-centered design process set up by IDEO. Really passionate about this, gaining insights. Maps on there, images of people that we've spoken to. We spoke to 120 people, including consumers and baristas, so it's you folks on the go. How do we innovate to prevent this from happening? One of the nicest little post-it notes on there, which you probably can't see, is maybe we can completely change our experience of drinking on the go and create these little balls of liquid that you get just scooped over and put in your hand, and you just have this burst of coffee and there's no waste. Of course, we can't do that. No one's going to really go for that. So we can't change the experience entirely, but we can innovate. So another thing, this is where we come back to the business models, which is what I was talking about earlier. Recycling companies. Who likes recycling companies here? Who thinks they're doing the world's best job? All right, I think you're all with me. That's awesome. All right, so recycling companies' main business model is to recycle waste. What does that mean? They always require waste being there. So if there was no waste, they would have no business. So what does that do in terms of setting up relationships with big manufacturers of single-use paper cups and recycling companies who take those cups and they give it to other businesses to make lovely other products with? Each one relies on the other one, always producing the problem. We decided to do something about it. So on a local level, this is what your waste looks like. Each and every one of you produces about 14.5 times their own body weight a year in their consumer rubbish, okay? Just have a think about that for a moment. This is our weekly waste. This is a very small portion of it. On a global level, I think everybody was probably following the climatic summit in Paris. This is Olafur Eliasson's ice sculptures. It's a very bold statement in the form of a clock. These are people who came out and protested to see what can we do about the status quo. Global leaders, arms in the air, victory. Victory looks great when you have your arm in the air, you're winners. It brings people together. Everyone feels really awesome. So we decided to create a little bit of play. We put a cup in everybody's hands, because everybody has probably a cup in their hands right now as well. So it makes sense. But we went back to the market. We thought, okay, we can't be the first people to think about a new cup that revolutionizes the market. We kept going, and we kept researching, we kept digging. These are some of the existing examples on the market. One of them, I'm not going to name any, when they launched, they estimated that they would convert about 25% of their consumers to a reusable cup. In 2015, only 1.9 did. So we realized something's going wrong with the reusable cup as it currently stands as a single-use user. They're fantastic. We love them. They're doing the same thing that we want to also promote. They are, but something's missing. We looked at enterprise models set up in India. Third world examples of enterprises are fantastic. You'll notice that they do not have the problems that we have in big cities. These are a bunch of guys, roadside tea vendors. They use glass cups. They collect them in these beautiful trays. There's no waste stream here. So we decided to start producing a product and innovating. This is a shot of a 12-ounce cup that we've looked at. Now you're wondering, why is there a cardboard sleeve on there? I'll come to that in a second. When we started to innovate, we built a team of scientists and designers. We had a biochemist, PhD, who's a fellow at the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. The Ellen MacArthur Foundation are heavy on the circular economy. How do we use materials that are in our existing supply chain? So we decided to use plastics. We've manufactured so much plastic, we just don't know what to do with it. And if we're designing a reusable cup, it should be out of plastic. We've developed some technology, and this is an exciting area which I'll come to shortly. This is how it works. You buy your coffee, you scan it. You get your coffee, you drink it, you enjoy it, you're on the go. You put in one of our collection points. It gets washed, gets scanned again. It gets put on the back of a fancy bike or something that's not combusting fuel. That's the general message. So electric hybrids, hopefully. And it gets sent back to the retailer. It's pretty easy. It's pretty straightforward. We had these systems in place about 25 years ago, and our market has changed. There's no reason why we cannot go back to revolutionizing this area. So we look back at the big brands. Branding is really important for these guys. It's all about their coffee. But, and this is why the sleeve is important, is anyone confused on who's selling what? So straightforward. It's ubiquitous, it's global, it's accessible, it's doing the same thing. It's not this, it's this. So these are collection points that we've created. They give you reward sounds. The one next to it is a toxic single-use paper cup, which doesn't give you a very pleasant sound. It's kind of like a sploosh sound. It's this, so we're working and piloting Cup Club with corporations. This is our existing system in place, and we've just simply put and allocated a space where we can put in reusables. It's this, commercial washing. We decided to quickly look at our impact. What does this mean for everybody? If you're all wondering, well, what does a cup mean? If we switch from disposables, we would save up to 47% reduction in global warming, 85% reduction in water use, this is very important, 92% reduction in annual landfill waste. The cup is fantastic in design, Starbucks, Costa, everybody have designed it to death. It works tremendously well. It stacks, it's lightweight, it's perfect for baristas. Well, we decided to work on that element. We worked with Grasshopper and Rhino to make it stackable, lightweight, easily transported. This is Cup Club on the go, at work. On the bottom, we decided to create an interface for everybody to enjoy this on another level. So when I mentioned the climate summit, some of you might have already gone online and had a look at each of your country's performance, because each company has a color code on how we're doing. We wanted to create a bridging space through a product that was everyday, global, accessible. And on the bottom of this is a technology that I was mentioning earlier. It creates a platform for people who are keen citizens of the city to do more. So it creates a platform to bridge from the local to the global level. You can identify your local barista cafe and who is participating with a reusable cup, make your way there. And you can instantly start seeing what your impact is. You can even click on See Global Ranking, so you can understand where you sit in the global picture. It's very difficult to break down a country's global performance into each and every single one of you. And we decided how best to do that, but through an everyday, accessible, global product. So our big message really is to look at the mundane, look at the everyday, look at the quiet things that are happening, look at reinventing the systems that are currently in existence, because they all need innovation to be put back in. The future isn't somewhere where we're going to, it's a reality that everybody creates. Thank you.
Thank you.